Hi, this is Gabe Rogers for the English Methods class. I'm recording what is technically supposed to be the second professional development book video, though in reality, this is actually my first. I wasn't able to get to the first video in time due to some unforeseen life events, so I'm kicking off with this second one. I am going to be talking today about the book A Novel Approach by Kate Roberts. This is a book about in essence, how we can go about getting kids to read. It talks at length about whole class novels and various approaches to them, and dives really deep into a lot of different aspects of it. But I want to, in this video today, just lay out the essential pros and cons arguments it makes in its opening chapters. Uh, I'm going to go first with the pros and the cons, and going to be tying some of the various TBs into each of those. So, the pros for why should we go about reading whole class novels, which for anyone who is for some reason baffled by that phrase means novels that the entire class is reading together at once, whether that is through in-class reading or assigned at-home reading to the same class at the same time. I'm going to go through pros in ascending order of both impact and importance. So, first off, the lowest down is that reading books and stories that are culturally known and relevant helps students connect and understand the world around them more. I have a quote here from Roberts in the text. She says, I can feel how reading most of Shakespeare's plays, a wide variety of texts from the Enlightenment, a brief foray into Victorian literature, and then a slew of modern texts from a diverse group of authors has helped me to be a part of the conversation, has helped me to get the joke, the reference, even the occasional insult. So, this is talking about how we communicate as a society through a lot of shared knowledge. If someone is talking about, if someone uses the word Romeo, we know what they're talking about just from a baseline understanding of this is a love story between these two teenagers. Even if someone hasn't read the book, they probably know who Romeo and Juliet are. Even if they have never seen it, never watched anything, read anything, nothing. That's a baseline thing that most people in our society will know. Um, Being able to engage in that conversation is really helpful for students and can be a very communal and uplifting thing when they're able to make connections because of the text that they have read. This runs into the problem of the canon in English literature and how white, male, Eurocentric, straight centric, homogeneic, all of these things. Roberts has a quote about that. She says, while reading important books, quote unquote, has been a help to me, I don't consider it a defining piece of my success in life, nor have the most important books that I have read belonged in the traditional canon. This is a reasonable point about it, but she still, in essence, sticks by her argument that even if these are not necessarily the most important books a student will ever read, it is impactful for students to have read them. This connects us with TP 7.6 that talks about promoting students' content knowledge through literacy instruction. The next pro that Roberts makes for the book is talking about the community that arises from reading a whole class novel. Students can connect over discussing the book, furthering both their engagement with each other and with the text. A quote from Roberts, when we have all read the same texts, a kind of layering magic happens. A student makes reference to a similarity between a scene her class has just read and a scene in another book. The power of that moment is magnified 100-fold if everyone has also read that other book. So, this is one of the biggest things to me about whole class novels is that the community that it builds within the classroom drives the learning of students in so many different ways. Students will be talking about this on the field at lunch or at recess. They will be, if some crazy thing happens in one assigned night's reading, They'll come to class the next day and want to talk about it. They'll be engaged because they have an outlet uh, to discuss these things that they don't have in the same way when they're reading books on their own and don't necessarily have someone else to discuss that book with. This can be a really, really strong point for students who are looking to expand their learning within that text. This engages with TPE 7.8. Engage students in a range of frequent formal and informal collaborative discussions, including extended conversations and writing for varied purposes, audiences, and contexts. The final major pro that Roberts makes for whole class novels, and the biggest one, is that whole class novels are hard to read, and teaching kids to read difficult text is the point of reading practice. She writes in the chapter, the act of grappling with complexity in a class of peers, led and scaffolded by an expert in the field, is a good experience to have, and one that will be essential if we expect kids to continue in their education. If we want our students to be confident, skilled, and flexible enough to tackle Ulysses on their own when they get to college, then we must tackle tough texts with them often. This is a really huge thing. The skill that we are teaching students is that reading, is that ability to process stories, process information, process writing, process language. And if we are not pushing the level that students can read at year over year, they won't continue advancing that ability. They will not be able to keep up if they are then being asked to read more difficult texts without any of the scaffolding that we can provide. A lot of college classes have little to no affordances for students who are going to struggle with that reading level. And we don't want to set students up for that. We want them to go into any kind of experience like this, even if it's not in college, even if it's just they are out in the world and for their job, they need to read an article. They need to process an informational text. They need to be able to process a handbook really well, accurately, and quickly. Any of these kinds of skills, if they don't have that foundation that we build in these classes, they're not going to have the same strength. Even if they can maybe read that handbook fine, they're going to be missing sections. They're not going to get through it very quickly. They're going to be struggling with parts of it if we don't set them up through these kinds of practices. This specifically relates to TPE 7.4, provide literacy instruction and integrated content and literacy instruction for all students that is active, motivating, and engaging, responsive to students' age, language, and literacy development, and literacy goals. And I'm really thinking about that last bit there, literacy goals. We are trying to push the level that students are reading. Those are the three main pros that are listed by Roberts for why we go about reading whole class novels. In terms of the cons, we got 4 of them, though don't be concerned by the fact that it's a higher number. These cons are individually mostly less impactful than the pros. But for the cons, we have the 4 T's: time, teaching, transfer, and text complexity. Time. Reading a whole class novel takes a long time. There is a quote in the book that is referring to a 1927 study on reading. Roberts writes, it found that students who read one book for 6 weeks didn't score any better on a comprehension test over that book than students who read that same book in a shorter amount of time and then went on to read other books that they chose. What did matter, though, was when asked about attitudes towards reading, kids who read more books in that 6 weeks had more positive attitudes toward reading than kids who only read one book. If kids are taken forever to read a book, even if they were initially interested in that book, or even if they find it fine, even if they are enjoying it, they're still getting less out of that experience than if they were reading more books in that time. And not only are they getting less overall, they're not getting more in specific. Like, we have specific data saying they would get just as much from the same book. They would have the same level of comprehension of it if they were just reading it on their own and were not discussing it with the class in that same way. They might be less engaged. They may be less likely to read that book. But if we're given that they read that book, the actual impact is the same. T number two, teaching. Con number two. The way the ways we normally teach whole class novels discourage students. There's a quote from Roberts. While some students might make gains, more often the ones who benefit from these pedagogies are intrinsically motivated and eager to learn. For the students who are not already on board, who are excited to learn but face obstacles, or who need support, these teaching techniques often keep them right where they are. So this is a big part of what Robert is doing in this book, is advocating for uh, not an overhaul, but a change in how we go about teaching whole class novels. So this is a less of a con that she is presenting and more of a sort of advertisement for the following chapters that discuss at more length what are the actual teaching practices that we want to go through to teach in a way that will be actually encouraging rather than leaving students feeling dejected or incapable. Third T, transfer. Kids don't carry over many skills from reading one whole class novel to the next. This one's pretty straightforward and is really connected with that teaching idea. Roberts writes, when the next novel begins, it often seems as though kids start from the same place they did at the beginning of the last book we read together. This is a really clear thing and something that is, they have data in the book that is mimicked across a lot of classrooms across the US. It's very, very easy for students to read a book, take very little from it, and then start up the next book, the next whole class novel, in the same place they were at before. We need to actually implement teaching strategies that are going to be helping them progress from one book to another. Having that progression over the course of a year, over the course of their time in elementary school, middle school, high school, making sure that year over year they are taking steps forward rather than just staying at the same level is key. And that's transfer is part of the things we need to overcome for that. The fourth and last T is text complexity. This is actually, to me, the biggest one. This is the most impactful one, and or not the most impactful, but the hardest one to do anything about. It's a fundamental problem that we come up against as teachers. Roberts puts it really succinctly, saying, what about the kids who really, like for real, can't read the book? Or, if we choose our novel with these kids in mind, what about the kids for whom this book is a breeze? So, if we are picking one novel for the whole class, no class, or not no class, but barely any classes are at identical reading levels across the board. Especially, I'm looking at teaching 11th and 12th grade students, especially once we get up to that point. A lot of kindergartners are going to be in similar places. A lot of them are not going to have very developed reading levels. 12th graders sometimes will be reading at basically the highest possible level. They will be able to read and comprehend text extremely strongly. Some of them are going to struggle to get through many, many sentences. And being able to select a book that fulfills both the capabilities of the student that is struggling more and the interest of the student that is more accomplishable or is more accomplished is a really tough needle to thread, and means you need to be really, really specific in your novel selection. And even if you are, doesn't always lead to success. The other T's, the other cons are things that are really addressable, I think. This one is a lot tougher and is one that is addressable, I should say, but not solvable. This is not one that we can fundamentally fix outright and then we never have to deal with it again. We're going to keep coming back to this issue. So those are the pros, those are the cons. The reason I picked this book and the reason I am giving this video presentation now is because fundamentally I want to teach whole class novels. I think they're a really compelling way of having students read, and I think there's a lot of stuff to them. Within this text, within what I've gone over here, fundamentally the pros are telling me why I should do this, why I should be teaching whole class novels, and the cons are helping me structure my lesson plans to avoid the pitfalls. That's the end of the day. even though Roberts makes some compelling arguments against it, I fundamentally think this is a really valuable thing. And so does she. She rates another many, many chapters of this book about it. So that's what I'll be talking about in the next video coming up in this next uh, 2 weeks from now, I think. I will be talking about the specific implementation strategies she suggests and how we uh, build from the pros that we have and away from the cons, or rather towards the cons to address them. Um, yeah, that's everything for today. Apologies for the bad mic quality and bad video quality. I'm doing what I can. Yeah, thank you very much for listening and watching.